No section on resumes would be complete without mentioning the ATS. This is probably the biggest fear when people are producing resumes at the minute. So I want to remove some of the concerns and talk about some of the scare stories. We're told that, most resumes won't pass this ATS system. And if you don't develop your resume in Notepad, then you've got zero chance. This is not true. And it's lost in translation somewhere. When I have used ATS systems, which I've used many, I've trialed even more, I've written ATS systems as part of my job. When we're using these, the vast majority of them are trying desperately to allow more people through, to be able to read more resumes. And I'm often reminded of many years ago when we were talking about web design, when this is a long time ago, but people used to make their whole website in one big image, right? And then it wasn't searchable. This was the problem. And it's kind of similar here. This is the fear. So if you actually read a lot of the documentation around what ATS systems don't like and what they can't handle, if you just actually focus on writing a decent resume that's not in some haphazard manner, you have clear headings, you use the right buzzwords, you use the right technology names, you have clear job titles and things like that, and it's not one big image, you're actually going to do okay. There is a wider discussion about columns, and we can talk about whether multiple columns is a good or a bad thing. For the most part, I would say just make sure your resume is clear for a human to read it. And if you can make it clear for a human to read it and you haven't done things in images, then you're not going to do too badly. So the vast majority of companies and people and agencies using ATS systems want more applicants. So if your resume doesn't pass the ATS filter, there's probably someone working on it right now, trying desperately to fix that bug so that they can read your resume, so that they can understand you. Because the vast majority of resumes that come in when you're doing recruitment, the resumes are terrible. The LinkedIn profiles are terrible, even when you try and scrape those. And I have tried. So it's not really about the access. It's not really about the formatting. It's more about whether people are putting the relevant information into their profile. So no amount of formatting it in Notepad is going to change what value is actually contained within that document. So if you can start to learn how to write a decent resume, you don't really need to worry too much about ATS systems. However, if you're going to apply to not just big corporate world, but if you're applying to FANG or MANG as it is nowadays, if you're applying to those sorts of companies, then you are going to have to worry more about ATS systems, because the bigger the organization that you're applying to, the more systems they're going to have in place to filter people out, because they're getting tens of thousands of applicants to every job, in which case they're happy to filter as many as possible if they don't have specific criteria, and they need as many reasons as possible to filter you out. But for the most part, as long as you create a decent resume, they actually want to process it. They want you to pass. They want to understand you, even if they end up filtering you out at the end of the process anyway. So let's not worry too much about the ATS. Let's worry about what we're actually putting in the resume. And we'll dig deeper into that in the coming videos. I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.